Have you ever dreamt of living on the beach or buying a house next to all of your best friends? What if you could buy the town? Investing has traditionally been a man's game. It's full of jargon and it's really hard to understand if you were not already educated in this space. Up until 1964 in Canada, women were not allowed to have a bank account that had their name on it. It only was up until 1964 that things changed and women finally started to get in the money game. It is estimated that by 2026, women in Canada will control close to half of all accumulated financial wealth. I'm not sure about you, but I am ready to dip my finger in that pie. It's time to get financially literate. This Wednesday, November 18th at 8 a.m. PST, Netcoins and Havana Collective will be hosting an event called Women in Investing and What You Should Know. In this panel discussion, you will learn about investment options in the traditional market, real estate, cryptocurrency, and financial planning. For more information or to grab your ticket, check out the show notes. Enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Welcome to the Have You Met Her Yet podcast, a podcast by Pink Crown Creative. I am your host, Lindsay Dent, the founder of Pink Crown Creative, a Vancouver-based marketing consulting company. This podcast was created to shine a spotlight on women in the workplace, who they are, what they do, why you should know them. In this week's episode, I feature Ayelen Osorio from Netcoins. She will be on the panel this week at Havana, and I can't wait for you to meet her and get a little bit of a deep dive about cryptocurrency before this exciting event. I can't wait for you to meet Ayelen. I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Have You Met Her? Today I have Ayelen Osorio from Netcoins. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay.
You're welcome. So to just preface this episode, Ayelen and me are both sick this week. So if we cough or sneeze, just letting you know it is flu season and we might both have little raspy voices. So just to kind of let everyone know. So yeah, I would love to know a little bit more about you, who you are, what you do, and why we should know a little bit about what you're doing right now.
Yeah, well, no, thanks again for having me. Like you said, my name is Ayelen, so if it helps some listeners, you can think of violin without a V, and that's how you would say my name. But a little bit about me, I am originally from Venezuela and grew up there, and then my family and I moved to Syria and Egypt, and then eventually I came to Canada by myself to study. And once I graduated, I entered the tech industry and have been there since. So I started out in marketing, partnerships, product management, and now I'm back at marketing at Netcoins. Yeah, so a bit all over, but it's been really fun to try different things.
Yeah, amazing. And so what can you say has been the difference of living in different countries to coming to Canada and working here? Is there anything that really stands out for you?
Yeah, I think adaptability. I think I can be thrown into different situations. And because I've had to, every time I move to a new country, it's always been like, okay, so where's school? Where's the grocery shop? Who are the people? How do you make friends? And you're constantly trying to adapt to the situation. And then there's sort of like a resilience that comes from that. And then, you can fall back on yourself. I think that's been a plus of moving abroad. But apart from that, I think one of the things that I've been exposed to a lot is inequality at a lot of levels, inequality between men and women, between different religions and sects, between like who has money and who doesn't. And that's something that I've always been exposed to in Venezuela, Syria, and Egypt. And what I can think of, that it goes back to how our political system is set up and how they make the rules of society and how people are broken down and who gets access to money and how easy is that access to money. So it's been like, kind of at the back of my mind, how money affects a society. And it's really funny that I never thought about that until my job now in Netcoins, which is to learn about money and cryptocurrencies. So I think to go back to your question, it's been those two things, this ability to have resilience within yourself, but also be able to understand the world from a lens that not a lot of people have access to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the experiences you've had
in all of those different countries must be so vast, so different, so similar in some ways.
Yeah.
But really interesting for you to have all of those perspectives and also still be aware that it's not equal, and especially I'm sure for women in many of those countries, and I mean still in North America as well.
Yeah.
What about that inequality, and what about financial services and just that industry in general? What has really attracted you? Did you have a past job or a past experience that made you feel like you wanted to learn more, you were hungry for knowledge? Like, can you share a little bit more about that?
I don't think there was anything in particular. I think that the way I landed at Netcoins was completely by fluke, which is like, an amazing gift. But I think, growing up, I was always conscious of inequality and always conscious of my role as a woman and a minority in, the Middle East, and then a minority in Canada, and how I fit within that. And of always, like, growing up, saw men have the power, men have the money, and women just kind of are on the sidelines. And I've kind of like internalized that a little bit. But my mom used to always say, go and make your own money, be in control of your own money, never rely on a man, never rely on anybody else, go and make your own money. So I've always grown with that, even though in the circles that I was hanging around, there was a very clear distinction of like who has the power and who has the money and the opportunities, right? And yeah, and then I just wasn't able to put it into words until working at Netcoins now, which is like when I was trying to understand cryptocurrencies, I really struggled because when you go online and you Google what is cryptocurrency, it is so confusing. It's so technical, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I haven't found more confused than what I started out with, And what I found helped me was, okay, well, maybe the reason I don't understand cryptocurrencies is because I don't understand money.
Right.
And so then I put it to the side and then started to learn about money and inflation and power, etc. And that's when I was able to have like words and understandings to all the experiences I had before. Right. But before, they were just lived experiences. They were like a reality. But now it's like, well, hold on, like life doesn't, or the world doesn't have to be that way. There's a reason why it's set up that way. And now I can be able to understand it and hopefully share it with people because, I do think we're very privileged in Canada. There's a lot, like we do talk about like we need to go far, but we're also really far when we compare ourselves to other women around the world.
Right.
Yeah.
What particularly makes you feel passionate about educating women in this space?
You know what? My passion for women started in high school. I got really involved in high school. So there was an orphanage so I went to high school in Egypt, and there was an orphanage, and in this city called Garbage City in Cairo. So all the garbage gets moved from Cairo in Egypt gets sent to this city, and so then the poorest of people live there. Wow. And they're the ones that do the recycling, and there's a lot of health hazards. And then Mother Teresa opened an orphanage there, and so women had to work, and they could come and leave their children there. And so the children were in this little orphanage that were being taken care of during the day and fed and had a clean environment to grow up in within literally a garbage city. And so it really, really amazing, really worth checking out. But even since high school, so I would go and volunteer there, and I would just from there on just started to become more interested about like how much we struggle as women. Like there's so much on our plates, especially in developing countries. You have to work, but you also have to raise a family, and you make such little money. And so I don't know, being a woman, being a minority, I just relate to that. And it's always been like my fight as well. And I want to now bring that to Canada. I think more women need to be educated about money and the ways that the system is not working for us. How do we, store wealth and think of the long term and not just believe everything that the media and the monetary system is telling us to do. We think, okay, yes, we can look into this, but what are the alternative ways to make money and store it that works for us? Yeah, and I'm not saying like cryptocurrency is the end all and be all, but it's worth considering.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we have a long way to go. Being in my early 30s and even looking back on my education through elementary school, through high school, a lot of what I personally know about finance and money is through what my parents have shared with me, or I've sought out that type of advice. I really feel like gap in education that we learn of, how to save up to buy a house, how to make savings, how to, save up to buy, weekly purchases, and all of those things should be ingrained. I think there's a lot of things in school that it should be a priority over. And there's such a lack of that unless you seek it out through businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Education, but it's just not something that's readily available and known. It should be something that should come, second nature to a lot of what is taught to us in schools. And a lot of people still just don't know how, to make a down payment. Like, what does that involve? Like, what does that involve? Like, there's so much out there that it could really be beneficial if it was widely spread, right?
Oh my gosh, for sure. And then you get to this age, you're like 30, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know much about money. And now I'm expected to be an expert in my own life with it. But how am I supposed to be there when it was never taught to me and when I didn't even know the questions I should be asking?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'd love to learn a little bit about Netcoins.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a bit more about like your history, what Netcoins is all about, what your role is. We'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, amazing. So we're a really small team. We're based in Vancouver, and not to be biased, but the most amazing team I've ever worked with. And I really mean that. I think that the people are amazing, and we're all really passionate about money and cryptocurrency and bringing that education into Canada. And so we're working on this platform where you can buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrencies. Not all cryptocurrencies, but a few of them, about 7 of them. And it's really, really easy. Like, I think a lot of people think that buying cryptocurrency, for example, is probably really messy and probably really complicated. And I'm not even going to dare to go in there because I'm already scared. But what we've done such a good job of making it really easy to, you have the platform and you log in, you create an account, and you see a few pages, and it's pretty straightforward, like fund your account, trade, withdraw. And it's really, really easy. It's almost as easy as like the way that you navigate your bank account, you get online, log in, you see checking, savings, credit card. It's kind of that same idea, but instead of dollars, then it's cryptocurrencies.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you know much about cryptocurrency, or were you drawn to it before you started at Netcoins?
No, I was not. I was actually coming from the Grizzly Bear Foundation.
Okay.
Before here, and back to my career, like I've been in the tech industry, and then I had a gap for about a few months, and just felt like I lost myself, and said I need a break from the tech industry. I very passionate also about conservation and the way that we're treating our natural resources and the way that money is affecting all of that. I got in touch with the Grizzly Bear Foundation, was working there for a little bit, and then there was an opportunity to join Netcoins. I said, well, listen, I don't know a lot about cryptocurrencies. I don't know if I can write about it because the role was content management. And they said, that's okay. That's what we want. We want somebody that can learn about it and talk about it in a way that people understand, in a way that's interesting, relatable, and you bring the people along with you. We don't want to scare people away. And so as you're learning, you read about it, and then you kind of bringing people along in this journey with you. Right. So that's why I was like, okay, that's what you want and need, that I can do it. And so I started the job, and I literally had no idea about cryptocurrencies. And it took a really long time for it to make sense in my head.
Right.
And I'm still learning it. Like, I don't think I'm, necessarily an expert. It's an ongoing process. But, like they said, I really want people to learn it with me. Like, this is me and everybody else, and we're learning together, and we're going to move forward together.
Right. Yeah, that's so cool that you have a position where you have the opportunity to just constantly learn and research and kind of better your knowledge and share that knowledge with everyone.
Yeah.
So people who don't know what cryptocurrency is, what is the most simplest term that you can explain what it is?
Cryptocurrency is digital money that is not backed by a government or a central bank. Is the easiest way I can put it.
Okay.
So right now, say our Canadian dollar is the central banks make the rules of the dollar. Well, how much money should we print? How much money should be in circulation in the economy? What should our inflation rate be? Et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they make all the rules. They own that decision making, and they have these meetings privately, make these decisions, and we don't know when these laws are going to be applied and what the long-term effects are of that.
Right.
Cryptocurrency, being money that is not backed by a central bank or a government, is really money that all of us get to decide what happens to it. We all decide, well, there is a limited amount, 21 million that will ever exist. We all know, where it's going. We know how much there's going to be in the economy, and nobody's owning all of that and making the rules of it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So because we've had such institutionalized systems in Canada, and I mean throughout the world with financial institutions,
Mm-hmm.
built a trust and we've built a reliability on them. Can you speak a little bit more on how we can trust cryptocurrency, or a little bit more about feeling a little bit more comfortable using or buying or selling it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think to your point, it's a really interesting point where you say, like, we trust the institutions. And I think what a lot of people don't know is that there has been an evolution of money throughout our history. So back in the day, for example, seashells acted as money.
Right.
And from seashells, then there was like salt acted as money, and cattle and alcohol and tobacco, and then gold, silver, and then was paper money and government money. So money has always evolved throughout time, and cryptocurrency is that next step in the evolution of money.
Right.
And government money is actually the first time in history that money wasn't decided by the free markets, that it wasn't decided by the people themselves. The government money was the first time in history that it got collected and now centralized in one place, which is our banking system and the government, right? And the reason why money has shifted throughout history is because of the technologies that we invented, because humans can be greedy, they can want to collect all the wealth and all the power. So for example, if we take like seashells, right? Like if seashells was the money, then somebody was thinking, oh, you know what? I want all the seashells in the world because I want to be rich. So let me create a technology where I can go into the ocean and collect as much seashells as possible and bring it, and then I'm wealthy. Well, what happened then is that did happen. Somebody did invent the technology. And then the moment that, say, a lot of these seashells came in, then it lost value, because now it was easy to get. Now it was easy. Anybody can collect seashells, and now it's not worth anything. And that's when then the people migrate to another form of money. And that's what's happened. That's why a certain specific money has changed throughout our history, right? And so, yeah. And so paper money, as we like to call it, government money, is the first time that we've broken kind of that trajectory, and it's been owned by central banks and governments who work together to make the decisions and decide how much money gets printed. And I think that what we think is that when money is printed, it's going to be made accessible to everybody equally. We're all going to get the same amount. Right. And what ends up happening is that they will print the money and they will pay themselves first, and their friends and the government officials, so the central bank and the governments, get paid first. So they enjoy more money at the same prices for goods and services.
Right.
And then it gets dispersed to their friends, and then eventually it gets down to the poor people. But by that time, there has been so much money in the economy, the prices go up, and then the poor people never get to enjoy the benefits of receiving more money. Right. And so it's when central banks and governments own that, they own the money, it's not fair.
Right.
Yeah. And so with Bitcoin, nobody owns that. We all own it. And Bitcoin is run on a blockchain, which is a ledger, a digital ledger. And we're able to see, well, how much Bitcoin is there? How many transactions have there been? Who has sent to whom, etc. I mean, it's pseudo-anonymous, so you don't know, hey, Lindsay sent Ayelen 50 Bitcoin. You just know this particular address, X, Y, 2, R, J, whatever, sent to this other address, who would be me, ABC 543 50 Bitcoin. That's all we know. And so we're
Okay.
protecting people's identities, but we know what's happening with the money. We know how money is moving.
Okay. Yeah, that explanation, I think it really makes a lot of sense. Like I really loved the breakdown of getting all the way back of bartering with like seashells, with alcohol, with
Mm-hmm.
tobacco, with all like that really, really resonates with me. I completely understand that system. And I don't think I've ever looked at the financial system that way. I mean, again, it's not taught. It's not
No,
like
it's not.
You're reminded by it when you watch, timepieces, television shows, films. You read books about history and etc.
Yeah.
Have that explanation. I think really, really
drives it home the message of what that actually means and how right now we actually are moving in that direction and how we're changing things up.
Yeah.
Whereas, like you said, it hasn't happened in a really, really long time. We've kind of been settled at this pace. We are going from something like that to something that's completely online. I mean, it absolutely makes sense.
It's the next step.
Yeah,
Yeah.
next step. So, thinking of all of this, where can you actually buy and sell and spend Bitcoin right now? Like what kind of retailers can you use it? Like what can you use it for right now?
It's because it's digital money. You can use it in the same way that you would with traditional money. By traditional money, I mean the dollar. So you can, if there is an online merchant that offers goods and services and they accept Bitcoin, then you can use it there. So you can use it as a currency to buy and sell goods and services, or you can use it as an investment in the way that you would perhaps buy gold as an investment or stocks. I think Bitcoin is typically used in those types of way. And the way to access Bitcoin, so to buy Bitcoin, for example, me being a millennial and a very lazy millennial, I don't want to go to a brick and mortar store because there are brick and mortar stores where you can buy and sell cryptocurrency. There will be somebody there to greet you, shake your hand, walk you through the process. And then they take a cut. That's not my way. I just want to do it on my own timing. Whenever I feel like it, from the comfort of my home. And typically that's what a cryptocurrency exchange, which is what Netcoins is, allows you to do. So you can buy it anytime, just log onto your computer and you do it yourself.
Okay.
Hey, listener, feeling excited about cryptocurrency yet? Us too. We wanted to take a moment to thank Netcoins for sponsoring this episode today. Netcoins is one of Canada's leading and most experienced cryptocurrency exchanges. They are on a mission to help Canadians understand, buy, sell, and trade crypto. They're extremely passionate about helping women understand crypto too. If you enjoyed this episode so far, we want to invite you to a really exciting event that we think you would love. This Wednesday, November 18th, Netcoins and Havana are hosting a panel event called Women in Investing and What You Should Know. For more information on this event or to get your tickets, check the show notes or head on over to HavanaCollective.com. Now let's get back to the show.
What can Netcoins do for someone?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a process that you guys offer? Like, what does that look like if someone were to go to your website? What would that relationship look like for someone to go?
Gotcha. So if you're new and you just don't know where to start, is that what yeah. We have, yeah. It's a really good question. We have an academy that we've built, and so it's very, very easy to understand. And we really put a lot of effort into explaining the cryptocurrency world in there, and also the options you have to buy and sell and trade cryptocurrencies. And also, how do you choose which cryptocurrency exchange to buy from? What are those fees that you should consider? And we explain all of that in the academy in really easy terms because there needs to be an education around that. We want our users to know what they're doing when they're coming in. And if they don't, well, we have a customer success team who is so responsive and dynamic in reaching out to them and say, hey, looks like you might need a bit of support. Let's get on the phone really quickly and chat about it. So we're really, really pushing towards supporting our users, whether they're beginners, whether they're advanced, whatever level you are, like we've got you, because the last thing we want you to do is to lose your money.
Right.
Just in the same way that if you're buying stocks from Questrade, they don't want you to lose your money, right? We want to protect you. We want for you to know what you're doing and to make smart decisions. And that's what we take very seriously, both from the marketing team in terms of educating our users, and also the customer support team, and having your back.
Yeah, that's really, really great to have that resource. And like you said, to have the academy to explain that.
Yeah.
One thing I want to mention that you kind of briefly said earlier was, I think you said there was 7 different types. Is that correct?
We offer 7 different cryptocurrencies on our platform.
Okay, so
yes,
what does that mean? 7 different types of cryptocurrencies. So I truthfully only thought there was one. So what does that even look like?
Yeah, there's thousands of cryptocurrencies.
Wow.
I think last time I checked, there were, over 2,200 cryptocurrencies. So just like we have different currencies, like over 175 currencies in the world, like there's different cryptocurrencies. Each cryptocurrency will typically have like its own website and talk about what its mission is, who the team is, what they're trying to do, what they believe in, etc. So before I think you consider buying any of the cryptocurrencies, because it can be overwhelming. Like if there's 2,000 currencies, it's like, oh my gosh, I need to buy all of them. They're all the future. Right. Take it easy. Some of them haven't lasted. Some of them won't last. Do your research. And try to understand the project. You can think of it as a project before you invest in it. Bitcoin is the first cryptocurrency ever invented. It's the most popular one, and it has the biggest market cap. So maybe start with Bitcoin, just because there's a lot more education and information and resources available. And then dip your toes a little bit and then see how you feel. Yeah. And so out of those 2,200, we focus on the 7 main cryptocurrencies.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And to clarify, none of these are like country based. Like it's not like a Canadian dollar USD, like nothing like that. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So each of them would be like, how do you know who's behind them, or how do you like where share location based of like where this came from? Like my mind is just kind of
blown, right? It's totally. And this is also because we're, a digital generation. It's kind of like if you have a company and they work remotely, right? You can have somebody that works from like England and somebody from Canada and somebody from China. And so that's the same idea with the cryptocurrency. It's essentially like a project, and you can have people from different parts of the world that believe in this and they make this their mission. And that's how the idea is created, not necessarily tied to a government or a country, because again, cryptocurrencies aren't backed by governments or institutions or central banks. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you for that.
No, of course.
This year, 2020, it has definitely rocked a lot of businesses, the stock markets, all of everything. What does that look like for cryptocurrency? Has it been negative, positive? Can you share a little bit more about how the pandemic affected that?
Yeah, for sure. I think if we look at a regular investor and you have your money and you're going to invest, right? The last thing you want is uncertainty. You want to be able to invest your money in a place where you feel safe, that it's going to be okay and it's going to last, etc. What 2020 has looked like, it's been a bit of a mess, right? With a lot of stuff going on in a political sphere, economic sphere, and then you add to that a global pandemic, and investors have been afraid. They don't know what's going to happen. And then you have governments coming out and announcing, we're going to do X trillion dollars in quantitative easing, which sounds amazing, because in a way it is amazing, because when you have more money during these tough times, you're able to pay your bills, you're able to pay for food, you're able to pay for your rent. That's awesome. But what people don't know is that the most expensive type of money is free money. Because what is free now, you're going to pay for in the future.
Right.
And when there is more money that's entering the economy, when the governments are just printing out a lot of money, it loses value. Just like if Ferraris were really easy to produce and they went ahead and produced a ton of them, well, they would lose value simply because there's a lot of them. And the same thing applies to money. When there's a lot of money in circulation, it loses value. And you don't realize this, but then the money sitting in your savings account starts to shrink. It starts to be able to buy for less and less stuff.
Right.
And so investors in 2020 were thinking, oh my gosh, we have coronavirus. We don't know what's going to do to our markets and how long that's going to run for. We have trillions of dollars being printed and entering. Our money is losing value. And so they've shifted gears and looked at what is an alternative way for me to save my money. And they've looked at Bitcoin, at cryptocurrencies, because they looked at Bitcoin simply for the reason because it is scarce. There is 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist, and we know that. There can never be more or less produced. And so we know it is scarce. That means if it's limited, it's going to be able to hold value in the long term.
Right.
And so we've seen a lot of regular people invest in Bitcoin, and we're seeing that in our platform. More and more Canadians every month are just continuing to bet in Bitcoin, and they're doing it quietly. Like, you're not seeing this in mainstream media. I mean, maybe for a reason, because I was recently watching a video that said, the banking system is a bit of, they own the media, they own law, and they sort of kind of make an influence from behind the scenes, and it's to their best interest that people don't know about Bitcoin, that people don't migrate to Bitcoin. But we're seeing it, even if it's a quiet little revolution, we're seeing it at different levels, like individual levels. Like back earlier in this year, Udemy, do you know Udemy, the online course system? They released a statement that during quarantine, there was an increase of 300 or 400% of Bitcoin related courses and blockchain related courses.
Wow.
And Coinbase, which is a cryptocurrency exchange in the United States, saw a peak of $1,200 investments into Bitcoin, which was similar to the stimulus packages. I guess suggesting that people were taking their stimulus packages and investing in Bitcoin. And you can find it online. He shows the graph and all of that. And then from the company levels, like there's a company called MicroStrategy who looked at what was happening in the environment, and they took $425 million out of their $500 million in cash that they had, and said, we're not going to bet on real estate, we're not going to bet on stocks, gold, or anything, we're going Bitcoin. And they transferred all of that into Bitcoin, saying Bitcoin is a better bet to protect my money, to save it. And we saw that with PayPal as well, taking $50 million and putting on a Bitcoin, which is very bold for a company to do, right?
Absolutely.
But that just speaks to the fact that more and more people are learning about Bitcoin and realizing the power of Bitcoin in protecting your wealth and in safeguarding its value. And once you see that, you can't unsee it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's been great for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and now, last time I checked yesterday, I think it was at $16,000 US. Yeah.
What do you think has been like the most surprising thing that you've learned being in this role, learning more about cryptocurrency? Can you share anything about that for yourself personally?
The most surprising thing I've learned, I think how noble the Bitcoin cause is. That took me by surprise, because when I was in Egypt was the first time that I heard about Bitcoin, and it, people said, oh, it's just for scammers, it's illegal stuff. And the more I learned about it, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, no. What's not very nice is the current money system.
Right.
And I think that I think people still have the preconceptions of Bitcoin back in the day. When we talk about, let's say, for example, with criminal activity, I think, remember that the blockchain is a digital ledger and you can track everything. And so the media was saying, oh, it's anonymous, etc. And so criminals are using it. But what happened is, because we could track the money, we were able to kind of track back to these criminals, and really the blockchain protected against criminal activity. That's the other side of the story. But the media went ahead and said, oh no, criminals were using Bitcoin and the blockchain. No, they got caught. And in fact, it's the dollar that is the preferred money for criminals, because you can't track the dollar. You don't know whose hands it has gone to. You don't know where it came from. You don't know where it's going. You can't track that. And so there's an argument to be said that perhaps it is the US dollar. And, you know, and when you have a lot of money and power, it might be easier to pull off criminal activity because the banks just turn a blind eye.
Right.
If you're wealthy
Right.
and you pay them, do what you want. We just won't, you know, we won't notice it. We won't find you, etc. But then they're very harsh with us, the people that are being very respectable and paying our fees, etc. So it's really not fair. It comes back to money and power.
Right. That makes sense. And from the countries that you've lived in, as well as Canada, how do you see cryptocurrency benefiting those communities in those countries?
Yeah, I saw in Venezuela, because Venezuela was a very wealthy country. Even like a couple of decades ago, it was one of the most successful countries in Latin America. And that's because we had large oil reserves. And so the government took the money from these large oil reserves and give it back to the people, etc. And they cut poverty by half. And then the oil prices dropped. They couldn't sustain all, you know, these welfare programs, and then they started to print more money. And then when they printed more money, then hyperinflation was created. They also printed money because they wanted to pay themselves and live a very lavish lifestyle, and meanwhile make the people very poor. But right now, like, you can't buy very much. Right now you have to weigh the cash, because when you count it, it's worth nothing, right? And so what I've seen in some documentaries and people going in there is that there is some people that will have an office and they have these machines, and in the really poor areas of Venezuela, and allowing Venezuelans to come in and buy Bitcoin. And obviously they don't know much about it, but they're walking them through that process. And so now these poor Venezuelans can barter with each other and trade with each other and have their own little economy without the oppressive hand of the government, who's making them poorer and poorer every year. And so in that way, it's been very helpful in facilitating humanitarian efforts and helping these people be able to trade with each other and live, literally survive the, you know, what's going on in Venezuela. When, you know, people, they don't have food, if they don't have electricity, you know, they're doing like surgery with a cell phone. People are going to garbage bags and trying to eat. Like, it is literally one of the poorest country right now. And that changed within a span of like 2 decades. Like, it happened so quickly. Like, a country can be successful, and this can happen to any country. You can be very well off, and then suddenly this comes crashing down very quickly. And then it takes a much longer time to rebuild. And it's happened with every country and every empire. There's been a rise and a fall. And so I think, you know, for Canada, yeah, we're doing great, but always know that. Always know how to protect yourself. Always know what happens if all systems fail me. And Bitcoin is a great way for you to be able to enter into a system where no one's controlling it, no one makes decisions for you, and you can trade with each other.
Right. No, that's really great to have resources like that for countries that are struggling, and to have opportunities that may not be corrupt in their country, and gives them opportunities to thrive, right? Like, that's really, that can be a really great option for people who are looking for something other than the traditional ways of what we know right now.
Right. And with Bitcoin, for example, with cryptocurrencies, you remove the middle person. And so let's say that there's a hurricane in Barbados. You know, you would have, right now with their system, you would have to wait for NGOs to get there, for these payment channels to be set up, you know, and then you've got to pay them fees, and the delays are in days or weeks, etc. But if we have Bitcoin, well, then we're able, from, say, here in Canada, donate to somebody that has been affected directly in Bitcoin, like instantly, with very low fees, and there's no middle person managing that. It's just direct payment to that person. And so in that sense, it becomes a really great tool for humanity to help each other out.
Yeah, that's really, really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
For someone who's interested in Bitcoin but is scared, they don't want to risk or they're not sure, what would you recommend be the best strategy for someone to like just test it out, just see what it's all about, if it works? Like what would you recommend someone who's just intrigued?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, I'm not a financial advisor, but I would say, listen, every investment, doesn't matter what it is risky. And the
Right,
same applies to Bitcoin.
right,
And if you're going to invest in Bitcoin, it is a high risk asset because there's volatility. You could lose a lot, you could gain a lot, etc. So you have to have an inner self-talk and decide how much do you feel comfortable investing in, how much risk can you tolerate,
right, right, right.
and have that conversation with yourself. Don't be impulsive. Take your time. Do your research. You know, if you speak to a financial advisor, they're going to suggest one thing. If you speak to me, I'm going to suggest something else. We're just all just different opinions. So do your own research, and
Right.
then decide for yourself how much are you willing to invest in, how much are you comfortable losing. Decide that for yourself. And then I would say also don't get intimidated in investing, because it was difficult to dip your toes in Bitcoin cryptocurrency back in the day, but now Bitcoin has been around for 12 years. We've come a long way. We've made it very easy for people with no technical background to simply log in. It's a smooth process. It's a platform that we recognize, a user interface that we recognize, and that it won't be as complicated as you think it is. And it's pretty easy and instant. When I first started trading, I was like, oh my gosh, that was so easy. It literally took me 2 minutes. Oh, okay, phew, because I was also nervous. I was like, oh, I'm gonna invest just a small amount just to test it out.
Yeah.
If I lose it, it's not the end of the world. And went ahead, and I was amazed at how quickly it was to buy and how easy it was. Then I got a bit addicted, and I was like checking my Netcoins platform all the time, and then you start to like enjoy it and start to want to try a bit more, and to continue your education process. Yeah.
Very cool. That's great. The next thing I want to talk about is this week you have an event that you're a part of on a panel at
Mm-hmm.
Havana Co-work Collective. So you're going to be a part of the Her Chats event on women in investing and what you need to know. Is there anything you want to share about that and what you're excited to talk about on that panel?
Yeah, for sure. It's this Wednesday, November 18th at 8 a.m. We have 4 people speaking. We have 2 financial advisors, 1 real estate person, and then myself talking about cryptocurrency as an investment. And we're really, all of us have a few moments to talk about our line of work and what these different investments look like. And then we open it up for the second half of the 90 minutes to our audience so they can ask questions, and we're right there to answer those questions and help answer any concerns they might have. So I really recommend it. It's just for women. So I really, really encourage, because it's going to be really, really good. Really
That's awesome.
necessary
Yeah.
as well, especially as we're
Yeah.
like wrapping up the year and starting to head into 2021 and thinking about our financial plan for 2021. This is going to be very important for that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really excited for that. We're definitely going to share more info in the show notes for a link to that. We're also going to be promoting that as well. So I'm really excited to learn a bit more. What would you say is one piece of advice you want our listeners to leave from learning about cryptocurrency? What is one thing that you just really want to kind of drive home with this conversation?
I would like the women listening to this to realize that we've been removed from the financial industry for a really long time. It's taking us a long time to get to where we are, and we're still not there yet. There's still not equality, and there's not going to be equality as long as there are men in charge, or there's like a central authority making all your decisions. Okay, so Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies is a way for you to hold your wealth, to store it, and to be the true owner of that wealth, that no one's taking any fees from you. No one's deciding how long it should take for you to access your money. And it's not as scary as you think it is. We've come a long way. The media did a really good job at bashing it, only because, again, the banks can pay out the media, the governments can pay it out. So there's a reason why it's been labeled as a bad thing. And when that happens, that should be a cue to say, hold on, there's something going on, and this is a revolution, and I'm going to educate myself on it. And if you have any questions, I'm right here. I'm available. I'm happy to have a chat or a coffee chat over Zoom, answer any questions. And I think we'll also share contact information and our academy as well to help people get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I absolutely think it is really, really important to educate women in this space and to continue to share that knowledge and share all of the benefits of how we can continue to uplift each other and help each other out, especially in struggling communities around the world. I think it's really important that you're doing that. I absolutely can't wait for your talk on Wednesday. Before you leave, I wanted to ask you one last question.
Okay.
What is your favorite thing about being a female?
Favorite thing about being a female? That's such a good question. I think we have an instinct inside of us that helps us understand people and understand the world in a way that males can't, and that's a gift. So it allows us to be creative. It allows us to make the world better, and that's not something that anybody can have. It's a superpower that we have. So trust your instinct.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much for joining me today. Where can we find you online if we wanted to reach out?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Ayelen_Osorio, I believe it is, but we'll share it. And I'm trying to just engage more on Twitter. So I'm writing articles. I'm posting it on my Twitter account, obviously about cryptocurrency. And my hope is that women can reach out, and I'm there for them. And also our Netcoins account at Netcoins, and that's also being managed by myself. And there I share articles, I share quotes, I share tidbits of helpful information, and we're really responsive. So if you have any questions, we will reply. You will be surprised by how fast we reply. And there's also our website, netcoins.ca, and that's where you can find our blog, our academy, and how to get started.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It was so wonderful to speak with you today and learn a little bit more about something I have been so scared to even figure out myself. So you've definitely made that conversation easier. So thank you so much for your time. Really excited for the panel on Wednesday, and we look forward to continue to see how things go.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed this. It was so great. Yeah, it was nice to chat with you about this, about a topic that needs to be understood a little bit better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us today. Want to learn more about Netcoins and